I'm Corinne Schaefer, and welcome to Create Outside the Box. If you're interested in watching this episode, please visit our Creative Operations YouTube channel under the playlist Create Outside the Box. As we wrap up season 4 of Create Outside the Box, I want to take a moment to thank you all for being part of this journey. This season has looked a little different with fewer episodes and guests because, like so many of us, I've been juggling a lot behind the scenes. Creative Operations continues to grow, and with that growth comes new projects, responsibilities, and a need to pause and reflect. So, after this 4th anniversary episode, the podcast will be taking a break. The mission of this podcast has always been to spotlight artists who are leading with creativity, courage, and imagination. That mission hasn't changed, but how and when we tell those stories might shift to better support the broader work Creative Operations is doing. Thank you for being here, for listening, for sharing, for creating outside the box with us. If you're not already subscribed to our mailing list or following us on social media, that's the best way to stay connected and hear when new episodes drop or when we have exciting news to share. Until next time, keep creating boldly. Musician and music educator Andrew Lyman is with this experience. What are some key points of advice that you would give to somebody starting out as a musician or starting out as someone who wants to get into music education?
Okay. So there's going to be a lot of options as far as where you could go. Are you going to be in person? Are you going to try to do it virtually? But yeah, I know it's easier to do things virtually, but there are some courses, I believe, for music majors. It's just more beneficial to do them in person. So just, finding something that fits for you, and it's tricky. I think there's a lot of options out there. There's a lot of great places, but just seeing what offers a lot of courses and options. I also think finding a musician, a professional that you can really feel comfortable with. I think that's really important too. Because you're going to be learning a lot, or you're going to be having lesson time and spending a lot of time, and you want to feel comfortable and confident with that person. So I would try to, find someone early on. If you're a senior in high school, I would, and really serious about playing music in college, and even if it's music ed or a performance degree, just searching for teachers at different schools and taking lessons. And again, just seeing how you mesh with that person. Because honestly, it would be a really difficult experience if you're in a place and you are butting heads with someone, because their mode of teaching is just so different than what you like, or their personality. So I think that's really key.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I did not go to any of my, higher education with just one teacher in mind. I kind of went because I liked the overall school and program, and I felt good at that place, and I would, visit ahead of time. It is important to match with a good teacher, but I agree with you 100%. The last thing you want to do is move across country to study with this teacher that everybody has said is the best, but they might not be the best for you, right? And that's just going to make that experience and transition so much harder. So again, taking those lessons ahead of time, checking out those campuses to make sure that you feel comfortable there. And the other thing is some of these great professors teach at more than one school, right? So if you've got, say there's someone who teaches at my alma mater, Indiana University, but you'd rather an in-state price, sometimes they also, teach at Mason Gross. So just to connect yourself with what your options are, you shouldn't necessarily have to go bankrupt just to like get into some school to study with a particular person. You might have more options.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And for new teachers, what would you say to new teachers who are starting out? This is back to school season. We're starting off with you back to school. What would you say to those new music educators stepping into a classroom? What would be your sage advice?
I like that sage advice. Yeah, just be as prepared as you can be. What I like to do is plan repertoire for the year. If I need to change it as I go, then so be it. But just have a set plan. I also think it's really important to just be yourself. I think it's easy to come off as someone that you're honestly not, and I just think that backfires. Like be yourself. I mean, like for me, during my first classes, even if there's kids in the class that have had me multiple years, there's always kids that are new.
Yeah.
So I always start off with, who am I? It's not about the course, the syllabus. It's just, hey, who am I? Who are you going to be learning from for this amount of time? So I discuss, my background, a little bit about my family, how I got into music, and then also sports, because I love sports. Maybe as much as music. I find a lot of value in it. I have my favorite teams. My students know who my favorite teams are. And it's a really great point of a starting point for conversation. And they're not shy about it. I think it makes the students feel more comfortable. Knowing a little bit more about me and, my interests. So.
Yeah, that you're a human being. You're not just a teacher, you're a person. Right. And you have shared, or possibly, you share interests, and it's not just about, tests and grades. Artist, Bambi Held. You describe acrylic pouring as a means of responding to the profound sense of alienation and disconnection in society. We kind of touched on this before, but could you delve a little bit deeper on how your work reflects these challenges?
As we kind of touched on, we need one another. That's pretty established. But it's easy to forget how important these connections are, and not just our connections, but how important our diversity is. And it's very easy to get caught up in this memification and this othering of one another. And in the process of othering, placing a judgment that anybody who isn't part of what I am, or what this abstract sort of ideation of what correct thought is, if we judge someone as not fully human, and that's a very, very slippery slope. That's like the crux of the alienation that we're all experiencing now. I don't think, I hope there would be very few people who would disagree with me, at least on that point. with my art, not only do I hope to, address and just punch the hell through that alienation by sharing this creation, this thing that I created with others. It's a place where we can meet on common ground, no matter who you are. I give this to you. Let's look at this together. Tell me what you see. What is your perspective? We can meet right here. Tell me what you see. Tell me, which way does this thing go? Does it go this way? Does it go that way? You can tell me why, or you don't have to tell me why. What we all recognize there is beauty. Even if you don't recognize beauty, tell me why. Let me understand. That's okay. This is abstract art. You can make of it what you will. I give this to you. Let's share this. And in that way, as like going back to when I say we make of our lives art. We have to. In that way, we share that experience together. We become part of the art, you and I and the observer. And that's the most important thing to me about the art that I do.
Tenor and creator, Bernard Holcomb. So with this, growth, I mean, you're heading back to the Met in the spring. You just did this amazing new work with Heartbeat Opera, which is a small boutique kind of company that's really breaking down barriers. You are creating, content on social media to like uplift people, and you're really going, hey, and again, this is create outside the box. You're really taking yourself out of that box. How do you see yourself moving forward as a performer and creator?
I would like to continue to sing at places like the Met. That's really fun. I did talk to my agent and I said, okay, now I'm getting a little older and I'm not sure about how much longer I want to continue to, do all this work. But we'll see. Hopefully not for another 10 years. We'll see. But I really enjoy making content. I really enjoy existing on social media. I enjoy encouraging people, especially people that are coming up the pipeline after me, and sharing my experience and hopefully helping them avoid some of the things that I found to be really hard in this career. I'm also really passionate about making sure that this art form remains diverse, not just racially, but I think body types, I think voice types, I think ageism is a big problem. And so if I had my way, I would want to be either an administrator or in some capacity able to help influence the number of people that are allowed to get the chance, that deserve the chance to be on the best stages and to be in wonderful productions, because it just burns my biscuits. It burns my biscuits that I feel like there are people that should be there that don't get a chance to be there because some casting directors and artistic administrators are really closed-minded. I would really love to exist in that space as I move forward and as I look at potentially retiring from singing.
Agreed. If it's the thing is you can either complain about what's going on or do something about it. And it's wonderful to see you, and there are other people. I feel like there's a movement now of performers who are going, I mean, this is wonderful, but I want to see more inclusion. I want to see more diversity. I want to see positive changes. I want to see a better working environment. And they're actually doing some things about it. And I think it's really inspirational And I hope that it continues.
I think good things are coming. I think, I'm truly inspired by all the positive changes that I've seen. We have a ways to go.
Mm-hmm.
You see the changes coming.
Artist Mike Kwan. Jumping from some of your personal projects to when you're starting a new project for, say you're doing a logo campaign, or I know you designed the beer cans at Triumph Brewery.
Right.
What is the creative process when you're starting a new project like that? And how do you balance creativity with the practical needs of the business, or dare I say, lay people that don't always understand the process? So how do you balance all of that? What's that process like?
Well, the process in almost any project is to ask the client what it is they want to accomplish and who the audience is and what do they want to have this project do. And often it's a lot of listening. And as I'm listening, I really either have the ideas pop into my head, which has happened a lot, but I also just jot them down. And I come up with a lot of ideas. That's the one thing that I generate a lot of concepts. In fact, probably too many. I've learned to chill it down because some people said, you can't show me 8 different ideas. I'm confused. So that has been a lesson for me is, try to solve the problem. If the beer can needs to focus on the community, I'll look at the different landmarks in the community. And, if it's a poster for the Olympics, features Muhammad Ali, would have to, maybe come up with him holding the torch or, close up of the face. And usually I might show 2 or 3 different ideas. But, you have to listen because you just can't go into a corner and come back with your favorite layout, which could really not solve the problem at hand. Whether it's an ad campaign, some of the projects would obviously, if it's a banner for soccer, World Cup soccer, you have to show a soccer player or a soccer ball or something. Or if it's for the tennis association or NFL, those kind of things are obvious. But oftentimes, people will come to me for my way of looking at things, and they have a little bit of an idea of my style. It's not realism; it's graphics. A lot of times, it uses typography, and so it's a blend of art and graphics and contemporary modern look to things, and color. Color is the one thing. So, I have developed a style, although the style changes sometimes. And I mean, I think that's a good thing because not every project requires the same look to it. So I've tried to be versatile as much as possible. And I'm grateful that I can kind of hear the project and then visualize and have something to show the person that usually gets pretty close to the mark that is desired.
Opera director Benjamin Spearman. And it is interesting because people who might not be opera aficionados or might think of it as an elite art form often forget that when it comes down to those basic story points, family, love, loss, betrayal, that actually is more accessible than we think. And it's just in the interpretation. And talking about the interpretation, as general director of Bronx Opera, where you direct a lot of the productions, you also direct for Oswego Opera, where you are a co-artistic director. When you're interpreting these stories, whether it's a new work or a standard classic or a rediscovered work, how do you balance in the storytelling of getting this across to today's audience between preserving the history of the piece and sometimes the innovation that's needed to reach today's audiences?
Well, the history of the piece is usually just, it exists, except in particular pieces where you really do have to recreate them, whether it's in English translation or whether it's just even taking a piece apart and putting it back together, as I've been involved in a couple of situations. But generally speaking, I would say that what I am trying to do is honor the history of the piece, understand. I mean, this is part of the research, I think, that is the job of a director or conductor or choreographer or whatever, or just even a repertoire, in repertoire selection. It's important to, I think, know and understand the original intention of the authors of the piece, the composer, the librettist, the lyricist, whatever, as you are also deciding whether or not you want to do a production which is placed historically when in the period in which the piece was originally written and intended to be, placed, or if as a director, dramaturg, whatever, like in that kind of world, I think, well, in order to tell this story in a way that will really, really hit in the way that it was intended to hit, I need to do some updating. I need to do some creative and respectful. And when I say respectful, I mean respecting the original intention and how the piece was supposed to hit its audience emotionally, and trying to figure out how to make an analogy between what an 1820 audience was going, what was going to affect them and what affects me as a person living in 2025. And if I can take the original, still honor the intent and honor the intentions of the creators of this piece, and manufacture a way to have the emotional impact be on our audience today what it was back then I've done my job, I think. And actually a great example of that really quickly was Der Freischütz, because Der Freischütz is a piece which really was in its time was so innovative in the way in which, especially the Wolf's Glen scene, this supernatural scene in which the bad guy convinces the good guy to make a pact and be in league with the devil, and you see all these images, all this imagery that was very specific to Germany 1821. But that imagery is not good, and it was intended to scare the pants off of people back then. And when we did it at Bronx Opera, my intention was to try to find a way to mimic that emotional impact on my audience. And so what we did was we used a lot of film and video in that scene in particular to basically depict what would be to 1820 audiences the future. Mm-hmm. And what the devil would do in the 20th century, and things along the lines of, obviously, the Holocaust or 9/11. What scares me? What we did was we tried to take what would scare the 1821 audience and make an analogy to events of the last 100 years that would scare me. And I think it was pretty successful. And I think because I think it did do a pretty good job of getting the emotional impact that Weber intended, but which his imagery would just seem kind of quaint, interesting, but cute. So trying to make that analogy is really the job that I think we have.
And, in kind of acting as a modern interpreter and translator, as a director, that brings up another point in a previous discussion. I know you're a big proponent of performing opera and translating into English. and you've done many translations yourself, just to make this even more accessible to audiences, that there's just one less barrier. Would you like to discuss why that's important to you and why you're a proponent of that?
Well, I think that what we've been talking about is really removing barriers. Mm-hmm. And language is the number one barrier. So obviously, titles and the ability to project, and now what the Met does to have the titles on the back of the seat is even a more individual experience, because the observer can control whether there are titles there and what language they're in and all that, which is a great innovation. But I do think that there is something visceral and more immediately reactable to about having the person singing in the language, in your own language. And, that I love you isn't something which is projected above the stage. And you're then kind of going through that process it's that foreign film process where the actor says the words, they're projected, and then you kind of understand it, but almost like you're reading, you're reading it. It's like you're reading a book. Whereas if the performer is speaking in your language, then that immediately hits you. And when they say "I love you" or "I hate you," the difference between hearing those two obviously opposite emotional phrases, and reading those two emotional phrases, to me, you can't recreate the direct reaction to your language being spoken or sung to you. And that's really why I think that it's important to, at least in some situations, for some organizations to do opera in the vernacular and not just in translation with titles. Because I just think there's an immediacy to it. And then you understand the timelessness. Again, it's less separated from you. And our constant battle in opera is to maintain what an original audience would have experienced in their own language. And we do all these kinds of things. We're going to do a flash mob. You're going to do multiple little fun videos to try to get people to come. But then when they come, it's still in a foreign language. And I just feel like it's helpful to, again, at least have the opportunity in some places, with some companies, to still experience opera in your own language, especially in comedy. I mean, because you don't want to laugh. I would rather have a laugh as a director from the person and from also the audience watching the stage and listening to the singers than just from looking up and saying, "Oh, that was funny, ha ha ha," like 3 seconds after the singer or actor said or sung the thing. So that's in a nutshell why I feel how I feel about opera in the vernacular. I also think that it helps the singers understand what they're singing about in the foreign language if they've also performed it in their own language.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Create Outside the Box. Please subscribe, rate, and share our podcast. You can listen to Create Outside the Box on Spotify, Buzzsprout, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. Check us out on our Creative Operations YouTube channel, where you can subscribe to watch our interviews. You can find and follow Creative Operations on our Facebook page and on Instagram at @CO_Creative Operations. For more information about Creative Operations, please visit www.creative-operations.org.